Hello again, and welcome to Finding Sanctuary. This is a series of discussions between Buddhist nuns about the Therigatha, which are poems composed by fully enlightened nuns at the Buddha's time. I am Ayya Vimalanyani, and with me again is Ayya Soma. And we're so happy to have you again, Ayya Soma. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Venerable Paññāvati. Thank you so much for hosting this beautiful series and for creating this project.
So today I thought we can dive straight into your poem. And as before, I think, will you be reading from your own translation again?
Yes.
So I will share my screen again, and we will see Bhante Sujata's translation on the screen, but Ayya Soma will read from her own poem. So Ayya, please go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. For 25 years since I gave up the worldly life, I had never fully known unshakable tranquility of mind. I had not attained peace of mind, had no power over the mind. Then, recollecting the teaching of the victorious one, I was met with a sense of urgency. Amidst so much suffering, I devoted myself to heedfulness. Obtained is the destruction of craving. Done is the teaching of the Buddha. Today is the seventh night from when craving was made to wither.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So I thought this was a very relatable poem. The description of the monkey mind. And for 25 years, she struggled on and never gave up. And finally, she made it. So maybe you can share with us why you chose this poem or what inspired you about the poem.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, it's very relatable. So, for example, in the Bhikkhuni Samyutta, Samyutta Nikaya, all the bhikkhunis there are represented they're very, powerful, like fully enlightened, great. There's no trouble whatsoever. So you're like, when is that going to happen? Or I'm like such a mess. This is so terrible. But when you read Sama's verses, then they're very much what often happens in our minds as practitioners. So that sort of, because as we go forward, the more we practice, of course, the more we make progress in the path, and the more greed and hatred and delusion is dispelled, but also our realization of the amount of greed, hatred, and delusion starts sort of becoming more evident and more present, and it can feel very overwhelming. And so we can get very demoralized, as I call it, and have the conceit of superiority of being the worst. Or like, oh, we're the worst at everything. We're the worst meditator, the worst at sila, the worst like at samadhi, the worst at panya. But in reality, it's actually the experience of pretty much any practitioner. I remember when I went to this retreat at Bhavana Society several years ago with some friends. I was still a lay person. And I was dealing with a lot of emotional distress, and my mind was a huge mess. And then I was turning around and seeing my friend Andy, and he was right there. And I'm like, oh, he's in like fourth jhana. And I turn around and I see Margaret, and she's also like right there, like looking very like good meditator. I'm like, oh, she's like formless attainments, and I'm here like this big jumble of mess. There's no hope for me. And then at the end of the retreat, we're all talking together, and he's like, oh wow, my mind was such a mess. I couldn't concentrate, like not even a second. And Margaret is like, oh yeah, there's so much distress. I cried so much during this retreat. And I was like, wow. What an incredible movie I created in my mind, projecting, all these qualities on my friends, and projecting also all these qualities on my experience, and having this conceit of being the foremost at awfulness in Dhamma, not knowing, as the Venerable here, Sama is sharing, like, not knowing even what tranquility of mind even means, like not being capable of attaining that peace of mind. So it's just, we need to acknowledge that it's part of the human experience, that we have trained ourselves for countless lifetimes in, following anything that glitters in samsara. So of course our mind is a mess, but it's incredible that we have the path. It's incredible that we have the Dhamma. And when we recollect the Dhamma, so when we use, mindfulness in terms of recollecting the teachings of the Buddha, then that sense of urgency, as she says, samvega, the sense of urgency can appear, where we're actually putting right effort in the practice instead of wrong effort in feeling bad about ourselves, but putting right effort in uprooting the defilements and then actually succeeding, as she has, as she says, and she talks like amid so much suffering, I devoted myself to heedfulness. And then of course, the natural consequence of that is the destruction of craving, is basically putting these teachings, bringing these teachings to the end, to the conclusion. And we're done with all this endless birth and death, endless states of existence as a woman, as a man, as a transgender person, as intersex, as whatever it is, gay, straight, bi, like all these different realms of existence that seem so unique to us, but in reality, we've done them over and over again. And the only thing we haven't experienced is enlightenment. But it is feasible when we actually really put, I think, really understand that we're not that special. That we're just as terrible as everyone else.
Exactly. And then sometimes we just put so much pressure on ourselves, I have to gain enlightenment now. And, I like, especially when we take robes, and then, we have this expectation suddenly, because we're monastics, we should be always peaceful, and monastic life will be so harmonious, and we will be arahants in no time. And then there's so much pressure on ourselves, and it's completely unrealistic. And I feel like, this is what is actually addressed also in this poem. Like, she needed 25 years. You can't, this is a long-term project. You can't expect to be enlightened next week. So, it kind of, she also says, like, what is the important thing in monastic life? Like, you just keep on going. You just don't give up. Like, she was determined all this time. She says she didn't found any serenity of mind in those 25 years, but she never gave up. She just kept going. She had that faith that finally something will happen. And then she shared, like, when she shares the method, how she did it, like, as you said, she recollected Dhamma. And then finally, after I'm sure she must have heard Dhamma teachings before, like all the time during those 25 years, but finally her mind was ready and something opened up. And then when she had this sense of urgency, also, like, we get an extra boost of energy from that. You really feel like something has touched you deep inside and unleashed some extra kind of interest in the practice. And finally, we can actually direct our mind and keep it, on the object that we want to keep it, because we have that extra boost of energy. And yeah, she attained awakening, as she says, through, I think you translated heedfulness. Bhante Sujato translated diligence, but it's pretty similar. So it's not because she was such an amazing meditator, or because she had like a magic pill, or because she was so wise or anything. She was just, heedful. She was diligent. She just kept going. And I feel like it makes it a little bit achievable for ordinary people, for like us who also don't feel like, who feel like the worst, or who feel like we're not anything special or anything. So to me, it's so inspiring, exactly because she is kind of average, because she doesn't have magic powers, or because she is not super special and super wise, and she doesn't attain the path in 5 minutes like so many other nuns. So yeah, this like method is something I feel like we all can achieve if we don't give up, if we just keep on going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it will happen when it will happen, when the conditions are ripe for the fruit to be generated, and we can't really control it. So we can't control the consequences, but we can control the causes, as my friend Venerable Drime, Tibetan Bhikkhuni, shared a while back. That really made an impact on my mind. We get so obsessed with the consequences. So our experience, we're like, oh, we're so unenlightened, we're so unenlightened, so terrible, so terrible. But we can't really do anything about that, because actually we've worked on the causes in the past. That's why we're unenlightened now. So we can't really do anything about our unenlightenment or our dukkha or suffering or whatever we're experiencing right now. What we can do, though, is create the right conditions for future awakening. So really work on, which is what she did for 25 years. Venerable Mutta, like actually probably countless lifetimes, and then 25 years of monastic life, of creating so many actions that then resulted in her enlightenment when all of the conditions, the right conditions, were in place. So yeah, I very much relate with you as well, like in terms of having creating this pressure on ourselves once we put robes on. I remember actually I was so happy when I took my Sama Theri ordination a few years ago. I was so blissed out, and I remember my first thought was, wow, all I needed to do was put robes on. My mind is full of metta. I'm so happy. I've never been this way. I'm so close to awakening. And then after a week, my defilements decided to ordain with me. Whoa. And I was like, okay, no, actually, I'm back to my old mess.
Yeah, still the same person.
I still need to do the work. Like, these are not, I mean, they're very supportive to the practice, but they're not a magic trick that all of a sudden we take these vows and we're enlightened. It's just actually, we put some of the supportive conditions, I believe, for attaining awakening. But it's not in and of itself. We don't get enlightened, unfortunately, just by wrapping ourselves up.
Yeah, too bad. Yeah, that would be nice.
Right?
Okay, maybe this is also a good place to wrap up the video for today. Again, for our viewers, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the description box, in the comment section. We will answer them all in a live stream. And the next episode of Finding Sanctuary will be uploaded tomorrow. And finally, once again, thank you so much for joining us, Ayya. It was so nice to have you today.
Thank you very much, Venerable. It's lovely participating in these series. Thank you for having me.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.